and welcome back to episode 110 of Talkoffamepod podcast with your host, Kyliemontigney. I'm so excited to have on speaker, author, and advocate, Gigi Robinson. Thanks so much for coming on.
Thank you for having me on. This is super fun.
Yeah, so what got you to be an advocate for mental health and chronic illness?
Um, I would say simply put my own experience knowing that I went through school and social life and the medical world all at the same time from middle school to college to grad school, and I dealt with so many different forms of ableism, and that really affected my mental health, I would say. And so I just decided to start talking about it online, and that's really how it all started.
Like kind of were you feeling about speaking up about your journey? Because for me, I have dealt with anxiety and depression, and I was so nervous and scared about speaking up about how I was feeling. I didn't want to be judged and just didn't want to people think of me differently. So I wanted to ask you, how did you kind of feel about speaking up?
Well, I think people who don't want to see the good in you are always going to see find a flaw. They're always going to make sure that something's wrong and that you're wrong about something or that you're not good enough for
Mm,
them. So when I started talking, it was more about the positive aspects of like who can I help and who can relate to my story and whatnot. And so
mm.
I really went at it with that angle. And when I did approach everything from that angle, I really think that that's where I started to see the community aspect of the digital, support group and everything really scale.
Mhm. And for a couple of years now, you have dealt with chronic illness and some other things. Like, how has that kind of impact you and your journey as an advocate for it?
Um, yeah, it's definitely interesting because it's become my job most
Mhm.
recently, the past 2 years. It's not just something that I do as a hobby and because I'm a good person. It's something that I'm dedicating my career to and being
Mhm.
able to work with incredible, just different leaders in the industry with. So it has its pluses and its minuses. I think it's extremely exhausting to share my life so intimately online,
Mhm.
but there's also a lot of things I don't share. And it also kind of gives people this false sense of like knowing me and expecting things from me and thinking I should think a certain way. But dealing with, thousands, millions of people online is really, I think it's an immense privilege, it's an honor, but it's also a huge responsibility. And
Mhm.
to be able to do that with such like intention and precise care with my content has been something that's caused me a lot of I think mental drainage
Yeah.
just to always be thinking about other people, but at the same time I know that at the end of the day it's all kind of like for good.
Yeah, that's how I felt as well, because obviously we both are an entertainer. We're always kind of thinking, like, oh my gosh, like we need to post something each day because people are really dependent on what we post and kind of think like, oh my God, these people need to post every single day. Like we need them to post. But to think like we are normal people too.
Hmm.
We're living our life as well, not only just doing what of course we love our career. Like, of course, a career is very important to us, but obviously, doing our life outside of what we do is also important as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so, how has social media kind of impacted you in terms of, like mental health?
I mean, I think this is a relatively broad question because I think it affects everybody. We actually know,
Mm-hmm.
statistically, social media does have, an effect on people, especially on young people, and part of that's
Mm-hmm.
because there's not um, legislature in place to protect kids online. It's not in place to protect our data from these companies that are essentially using it to make us more addicted. And this goes for all social platforms. No one's, innocent here. And I just feel like the more you understand about the research and the psychology of how it's affecting our minds, the
Mm-hmm.
more intentional I have been with what I create. And for a period of time, I was really guilty that I was creating content that was like going to events and New York Fashion Week and like feeling, doing things that were fun for me
Mm-hmm.
instead of my educational content, which is what people were used to. And when I really made that shift, I think that was a moment where I had a lot of fear that people would stop liking my content. People would, say like, oh, well, like you're not what you used to be. And like, why is that? But I also think that like there can be a duality to it and that you can have both at the same time. But it's definitely a challenge. It's a challenge every day. And I think being intentional when you're around your friends and your family and dedicating yourself to hang out with them and have meals without technology is like super, super important because
Mm-hmm.
as much as I use social media and a lot of influencers use social media to like build a digital community with like air quotes around it,
Mm-hmm.
it usually doesn't tangibly translate to in real life events.
Yeah.
And so we're using these digital audiences that we've built to really feel something, to feel like we're connected with people when in reality, they don't know who we are. They don't know what our integrity is. They don't know our morale. And so I think it's just really important to make sure that we kind of like level ourselves out a little bit and
Mm-hmm.
acknowledge that.
Yeah, exactly. It's like with social media has become really a huge part of everyone's lives, and everyone is usually based on social media, especially for content creators or people in the industry. They're mostly making content and they're mostly doing things to help make other people, well, basically make a difference in people's lives. And basically,
Yeah.
with content creators, they're always making content. But the most important is like when you're with family or friends or whoever it may be, or when you're in a public outing, it is really the important thing to really be like acknowledge what the world is in front of you, not what's based off on the screen.
Right.
And so you have a newsletter called the Creator Chronicles. Like what
Yeah.
topics do you usually cover in the newsletter?
Yeah, well, the newsletter is definitely a passion project that I get to when I get to. And if I don't get to it, then I kind of like let it be. I
Mm-hmm.
think that, the concept, it's called the Creator Chronicles. It's about the intersection of social media and mental health and chronic illness and what's going on in the creator economy. And so kind of a conglomerate of all of that. I've done I did an episode on NFTs and Web3 for, mental health brands doing it right. I've done one on digital advocacy and like activism from Gen Z specifically and other generations too. And uh, yeah, a couple other ones. I did one on fashion and body inclusivity and confidence. So I would say expect more of that in 2023. I just needed, this year was just very busy. So
Mm-hmm.
I
Yeah,
only
there's
got to
always
four so far.
yeah, like, there's always something going on in today's society, right? In everyone's lives.
Yeah.
And so like you have started Everything You Need Is Within, which is a talk show that puts conversations around body image, mental health, chronic illness, and identifying with leading industry
Hmm.
experts and influencers and licensed professionals, ultimately leading to change. Like, what do you want your followers to take away from your show?
I feel like they ultimately should take away a sense of like belonging and a sense of feeling seen. I
Mhm.
know that I created this show because I wanted to talk to other creators and I wanted to almost feel and talk and discuss things that I was struggling with to see if also like surveying like are other people dealing with this too and my conclusions were true. They
Mhm.
definitely did struggle a lot and I think we're living in a time where like we've seen fame throughout the decades and how it's gone to people's heads but now it's
Mhm.
you could go viral overnight and your entire life could change and so I really think that making the most of it and trying to understand as much as you can like how it's going to affect you and everything is definitely key.
Yeah, because obviously, like anything can change overnight, especially in social media. Like whatever you post, whether it's on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, or whatever thing you like to use, it can happen to be like famous overnight. You never know. Some
Yeah,
people can let them get to their head. Like some celebrities think, oh my God, like I'm famous. How do you not know me? Like that's how some
right.
people are. And that's really, of course, you might be famous from like acting and stuff, but that's really like of course it's your whole life, but it's not like you're basically famous for what like one TikTok video or something, you
Yeah,
know?
yeah, it happens, definitely.
And so if you were a finalist in the Sports Illustrated Swim Search, like what was the kind of like the process like becoming a finalist?
Yeah, I mean, it was definitely, I think, career changing. I think the most important thing that I got out of that experience was like just knowing that like other people needed that hope and like that validation to know that like if you live with a health issue that it's okay and that you don't need to look a certain way and you don't need to make your you know you don't need to change your body and you don't need to do anything, and having this incredible organization and kind of validate that but then also amplify it was really just like a dream come true because it's allowed me the, I think, ripple effect of
Mhm.
garnering a larger audience, but also reaching more people and raising awareness and spreading positivity around, living with chronic illness. So it's
Mhm.
been great. And, shooting was amazing. And I model for fun. So
Mhm.
to get a spot in the magazine was just kind of like very shocking and
Mhm.
surprising, but also such a nice surprise.
I love that. And so you're going to be launching an official speaker series in which you partner with some brands like St. Jude Children's Research Hospital, Waco Health, Girls on the Run, and so much more. Like, what can people kind of expect from the speaker series?
Yeah, I mean, I've definitely partnered with a ton of organizations in the next year. I know I'm going to do my best to do a lot more work with, big social companies like Instagram, TikTok, Snapchat, Meta, etc.
Mhm.
And I think that um, people can expect to learn more about social media and technology and how it's affecting us, but also mental health and chronic illness advocacy and awareness. Because truthfully, like even if we're dealing with like mental health issues, those are invisible and they need to be kind of recognized. And I think they deserve a spot. And just again, making people feel really seen and know that they're not, alone.
Yeah, that's amazing. Like that's really a that's the reason kind of like why I started this platform. It's because like people really deserve to be seen no matter if they're different, no matter if they deal with a disorder or depression or anxiety or whatever they may deal with, that they're not alone. Like I personally think like when I was very young, I personally thought I was the only one dealing with anxiety and depression and that it was like the worst thing in the entire world. And to think like when I started this platform back in 2020, that there's some other people that do have the same things as me, I'm like, oh my God, this is amazing. And during the pandemic, a lot of people have dealt with anxiety, depression in many ways. But people might have
Yeah.
the same, but people might have it different. And to think like many people have dealt with the same things as you is really amazing that it makes you think like you're not alone in this journey.
Yeah, absolutely. And I would echo that.
Mhm. And so, like, what is some advice for people that are afraid to use their voices about mental health or illness that want to speak up?
Well, I think there's two parts to this. There's the piece of why do you want to speak up? Do you want to speak up because of your own experience? Do you want to speak up because you feel a pressure to because other people are doing it? And really understanding and figuring out that before you do anything. Number two would be, are there other things you can do before you take action? Are there nonprofits you can support? Are there educational resources that you can look at before you make, a statement? And you talk about it. So I always say research and take inspired action. Be very intentional with it, because if you just go ahead and talk about your experience online, that's great. But like, what are you doing it for? And
Mhm.
what do you hope to gain from it, right?
Yeah.
So I would say just be very cautious because when you're talking about mental health, it's a very intimate thing online, because a lot of times if you have any sort of audience, you run the risk of people judging you. You run the risk of people really taking things out of context, the risk of judgment from close friends and family, the risk of, you know, your employer seeing it, treating you differently. I mean, there's so many variables that go into it. So I always tell people to, you know, think before they act. And
Mhm.
if they do want to get involved with a certain community in the advocacy or activism realm, definitely just like do your research and see and figure out your why first.
Exactly. And so thank you so much for coming on the podcast. It was so great speaking with you. You're sincerely amazing. Keep doing what you're doing. I can't wait to see what things are coming in store for you in next year. And where can people like follow you on social media if they want to connect with you?
Yeah, thanks so much for having me. You can find me anywhere, just at the at symbol, the word it's and Gigi Robinson. So it's Gigi Robinson everywhere.
All right, perfect. Thank you so much for coming on again. We'll speak soon. Thanks so much for coming on.
Yeah, thank you so much. And I have like 4% left, so I guess it works out.
Yeah, perfect timing, right? All right, talk to you
Yeah.
soon.
Okay, thanks.
Of course. Bye.